Hello, thank you very much for joining us again today. This is the last part of our interview with Francesco. Thank you for following his journey, his musical journey as a musician and human being. So enjoy this last part. Thank you. So let's segue into that. Next question that I had for you is, you have a new project, so there's no way I would forget to ask you that question. Can you talk about your first record as a band leader, as a bass player? How did this project come about? What were you, what did you want to accomplish artistically in this project? If there was one specifically you wanted to do, if there was one specific target, I should say, and talk as well the musicians you chose to on this record.
So, the record was in the making since 2015. It took me a long time. 2015, it's when I decided I wanted to do my record as a band leader. So I started to write more music, What really got me into writing again, because, of course, when I was in school, I was always interested in writing. And you start to work in New York and you work.
Yeah.
And you forget about all those things. Then, really, the key element that got me into writing again was collaborating with my girlfriend, with my partner, because she was experimenting already in 2013 with videos and dancing, and she needed music. So I started to write, and I was like, oh, I actually remember these. I like these. I like writing music, And one step after the other, in 2015, I started to work on what I wanted as my music, somehow. So I started to write, The goal, I really never had a stylistic goal in head.
Okay.
But the main focus for me was to write music that somehow was going to bring the listener somewhere. So you can say evocative, you can say, with some kind of a narrative aspect to it, a narrative quality. Not cinematographic, because I know that's a different style of music. It's not what I do. But so I really cared about strong melodies, forms that weren't the usual A solo form, but I wanted to write sections for different solos. Some songs, I wanted something that was a bit more thought. And at the same time, I really wanted to give as little as possible direction to the musicians. So I knew I had to wait to find the cats I wanted for the record, I had many ideas in my head in New York, but I was never able to have a full quartet. Never. Because every time I had somebody in mind, and then somebody would get busy with a gig. Going on the road with somebody, going there, doing this, doing that. So I was never really able to even rehearse my music in New York.
Wow. Yeah, I know.
Because I wanted to do this thing where, I wanted to try the melting pots, And that never happened. And so I kept on writing and fixing and polishing, Of course, I would bring some compositions to sessions and things like that, but that was just, to see if they actually were good enough to be played, And then, in Berlin, when I moved to Berlin, I was always thinking about, I want to do my record. And I realized in Berlin, everybody does that. Everybody has his own project with his original music, and they do records. And they just do it. And somehow that put me in a place where I was like, okay, I found two musicians that I really like. And of course, being in Europe was easy to have my brother on drums. I didn't have to search for that, And so I decided to book everybody for a week in Italy, fly them to Italy, in my hometown, because my brother has a great rehearsal space here in Italy, and I knew a great studio. And and just play together for a week, do a gig, and go in the studio. So that's what we did. Yeah. The musicians I picked, I mean, you know me, I'm very picky with musicians in general. So I always had specific mix in mind, you know. And to me, the three musicians that are with me on the record sit well together. I could hear them together in my head, even if they ever play together, you know.
Can you
So
tell
that's
us
how I
their
approach.
names?
Hmm?
Can you tell us their names?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, just for the
So,
listeners.
the saxophone player is Omri Abramov, and he's originally from Israel. He's been living in Berlin for quite some time. I don't know exactly, 4 or 5, something like that. And he's a great musician. It's just the kind of musicians. It's the kind of musician that really become my friend too. You know, usually there's something when a musician is more than just a performer, but he also thinks as a producer.
Yeah.
So he always thinks about the big picture, and that's the way he plays. And then he writes music, and is very open, listens to every style of music, you know. So that's the kind of guy. And I knew right away that he was a great fit for what I wanted. And then the guitar player is Tal Arditi. He's from Israel as well.
Oh,
And
okay.
Tal, he lives in Berlin, and he's 21, super, super young. And he has this energy. You know, he's so curious. He wants to learn new things. He wants to play new things. He's always hungry for new things, you know. And the way he plays is pretty much, there's a lot of that in the way he plays. And also, I knew he liked pop rock, not only jazz. And there's a side of that in my music. And he's a sponge. He's able to learn everything very, very, very quickly. And so I wanted to try that together, you know. And my brother, Andrea, sorry, I went black. My brother, Andrea, well, you know, that's easy.
Yeah, it's your brother.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, and that's something, that's kind of the mindset that I am now for my next phase of my band when we're gonna start playing again live. You talk about you wanted to give as less of direction as possible. How were you able to accomplish that? Because you still have to have a little bit of structure. So when you talk about not giving too much direction or try to give as less as possible, were you talking in terms of structures or when to play or not, how to play? Can you be a bit more specific?
Of course. So, I wrote charts for all the songs, lead sheet. Of course, I would talk, you know, with the form. The form was always clear. That wasn't improvised. I mean, there is a song called Rocky where the solo section is completely improvised. But it was clear for everybody we were keeping 8-bar phrasing, you know. So I wrote out melodies, and I would just say, oh, here, you play the melody, we play, you know, we do this, we do that. And then I would just give a vibe, some ideas, you know, like, oh, these I have, you know, for instance, in Rocky, it was pretty self-explanatory. I just started to play the opening riff with the bass, and obviously it was more of a rock noise kind of vibe, you know. Almost every song, I was always trying to write music that was self-explanatory as much as possible. So I wouldn't have to tell to the guitar player, play this or play that. That happened only on 2 songs. One where I asked him, on F1, I asked him to give me some chicken grease. The D'Angelo 9 chord.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
do that. And then another one is JW, when I was like, you know those Western movies? And of course he's 21. He's never seen those Western movies from the old times. So I was like, okay, put the tremolo on, open string, triad, you know? And that's the only time I actually told them what to play. Everything else was like ideas. Oh, this is more like, think of Led Zeppelin. Oh, this is more this kind of vibe, but very, very little, and I really wanted them to find their space in it. And again, it was my first record as a band leader, and at the same time, I wanted to try this approach. I wanted to see, by giving full trust to the musicians I play with, see how it can go. Also because, the trust thing is something that I learned when I was playing with Savion Glover. I remember he was always talking about trust in your bandmates, trust in the people you work with. And I was just thinking, how far can I bring it, So that was the concept.
This is a great concept, and it really helps me, actually, even myself, to think about that. The only thing I'm thinking about is this concept, and you said it in your story, is how much can you do that in New York City when everybody is so quickly busy, Even for my first project, one of the reasons why I wrote everything is just because of time. I felt like, your concept the concept of having people so much involved means that you able to, like you said, a week or on a regular basis, having the same cats at the same time, if possible, jamming and all that and create a sound. But in New York, sometimes it's,
No. I think that's why I wasn't able to record that in New York, because also, I had this thing I wanted to try, and I was never able to find that, like not one person or two persons, but a full band, because amongst professional musicians, that's something that doesn't happen. If you're an amateur and, you're a young kid, you go on the road, that's the time when you do that. But when you become a professional in New York, you work, and you work by the time, by the hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm going to try this concept for the Quiet Stars band, and we'll see how far I can go.
Yeah.
Or if I can even take off with that. One of the last question that I have for you, can you talk about post-COVID, or how was COVID for you as a musician in Germany, as a person? How was it for you and your partner? And what are the things you learned from that period?
So, throughout the first period of COVID, so the first lockdown and everything, I felt I was really lucky to be in Germany, because Germany was giving everybody the sense that they knew what they were doing. They gave everybody really good financial help right away. It was quick, and it was enough to really survive for months, And so we had this sense we were in the right place. They were so organized. So, all the cliches we say about Germans, they were all showing up. So throughout the whole first period, I was happy about it. And then, I took the time in the first lockdown that I'm talking about, March, April, and May last year. That's the first lockdown, because then we opened up again in Europe. But throughout the time, I took time to learn German. I studied German for 3 months. That was good. To just be able to order bread, because it's a very hard language. But now I can go to baker and order bread. It's something, So I kind of lived it well, and then I was doing Pilates with my girlfriend. We were doing yoga, and it was okay. Then things were a bit complicated because we had to move apartment, and we had some things in Italy we wanted to bring up. But all of that happened at the end of May. Things were opening up again in Europe. So it was fine, That whole period was okay. It became harder when they started to close things again in October. End of October, they started a second lockdown. But it was different this time. It wasn't everybody home. It was all the performing art home. Everybody else, you can still work.
Oh, really?
And that happened. And it went on for a month. And then in the middle of December, everything was closed again. Everything. So that lasted for quite some months. And at that time, Germany had less money. Vaccines weren't coming in. They were so slow with the vaccines, so slow. And we all kind of lost a bit of faith. Germany, And yeah, so it was a bit harder. Something that I really got out that really helped me a lot, and you're gonna laugh because you know me well. I started running in the park.
Wow.
And that was a major help, psychologically and physically. And finally, 36 years old, 35, still 35, let's not push it. 35 years old, I discovered the power of being in nature and how it's energizing me.
I'm so glad this is recorded.
I know, it took me a while, right?
It took you 35 years. I've been trying to convince you. For 10 years we were together in New York City.
No.
You needed a pandemic, like something huge, like something astronomical to convince you.
It was a few months ago that I was running in the park and I was looking at the trees. And at a certain point, I don't know how familiar you are with some comic books, but Superman, he takes his energy to be Superman from Earth and Sun. So when he's really down because they beat him down with the kryptonite, blah, 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 he pulls on that energy. And I was feeling like that. I was like, yes. From the trees and the sun and all of that, I'm going to fly out of this, And it's something I kind of need to do now. It's a routine I need at least twice a week. Ideally, it's 3 times, but at least twice a week to go in the park and run in the park for some time. Yeah.
You know what is comical? Because I would think New York would be the best place for you to understand, I need an escape from this crazy burning stove that stayed 24/7. But you went to a place that is kind of not as crazy as New York, but not as calm as Italy. So it's kind of in the middle ground. And you finally get it. So that makes no sense to me. Like you were in the perfect place for 10 years.
I know.
To feel like I need to get out. I need to be near a lake. This is crazy. I need to breathe for a second. Fire trucks all the time. Police sirens all the time. No, you were cool there.
Yeah, I was totally fine in New York. With all of that, I was totally fine. I needed the pandemic. That's really what I needed.
That's what you needed, a pandemic to get it. Wow.
So that's something I learned throughout the pandemic, to go on with the question. And then, of course, my first record was released, so I learned a lot about that. And it's very hard. And also, to finish the story of how I lived the COVID, then, the vaccines actually started to come in at a certain point in Germany. So they started to open clubs again. I had a few gigs. I had a couple of recording sessions. So now it's fine. I'm again happy about it. I'm actually quite positive about the future. I try to, and what I learned in the pandemic was that, running into the woods.
Running into nature and everything. Wow. Well, that's the best thing I've heard since I've been doing this podcast. The funniest thing ever. To finish, Francesco, I usually do a little game with my guest. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you have to try to answer without thinking too much. So, if you were not a musician, what you would want to be?
I would love to be a piano player.
That's a musician, but okay. You said it without thinking. You said if you were not a musician, what you would want to be?
Oh, sorry. Okay. An artist, probably a painter or a movie maker.
So funny. You said the same thing that Andrew said. But Andrew said, I want to be a musician.
Well, yeah, that was my first thing. When you said musician, I said, because I misunderstand. Sorry, yeah, but
It's
go
okay.
on.
What do you prefer, a comedy or drama movie?
Drama.
Cake or cupcake?
Cake.
So what country you wish you could live in if you were not a musician? Basically, your favorite country you visited or you wished you could visit?
I don't know. This I really don't know. I'm not so
Okay.
attached to geography. There's many places I love, but I don't have an answer for that.
Okay,
Unless
that's
I
cool.
think about it.
Okay, that's cool. Your celebrity crush?
Again, I don't know. My celebrity crush. When I was a teenager, I wanted to marry Alicia Keys. That counts?
Yes, they count.
Okay.
That's a former celebrity crush.
Yeah,
That
so
counts.
it's Alicia Keys, yeah.
Yeah. The instrument you wish you could play?
Really well piano. Just a little bit, I would be happy to play drums because that's nothing I can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the end of our conversations with Francesco Beccaro. Thank you again for following and listening to his story, his journey. Our next guest is DJ UMC from Pennsylvania. I can't wait to share his story with you.